started off innocently enough. On November 7, 1993, as a Foot Locker store in Tallahassee, Florida was about to close, a man named Raul Bay showed up with student athletes from the Florida State University football team. The players went on a buying spree. They bought $6,000 worth of merchandise and they put the purchases on his credit card. Student athletes are highly regulated by the NCAA. They may not accept gifts or cash from sports agents whose job it is to manage athletes in the signing of professional contracts. Of course, that's recently changed, but for this story, that was true. Sports agents are highly regulated. Most register in the state in which they operate. A bird dog or runner is a freelance go-between, kind of a semi-agent. They may be employed by a particular agent or act as a kind of freelancer for multiple agents. To understand the Florida State shoe scandal is to know a bird dog named Coach Nate Seaburn. His trademarks were his fine clothes and huge championship rings from UNLV. Seaburn never coached at UNLV. The ring was a replica. Seaburn met Raul Bay in Las Vegas. Bay wanted to launch a sports equipment line, and he wanted to recruit a number of Division I athletes to help him endorse his products. Seaburn said that such a goal was right up his alley. Seaburn arrived at Florida State University to scout players, both for Bay's equipment line and for himself as a bird dog. However, he had no connections at FSU. Seaburn struck up a relationship with a woman who had a connection to the university. She thought the son of a friend might be the connection Seaburn needed and introduced Seaburn to several student athletes. Now, Seaburn told the athletes he was associated with a registered football agent. He wasn't. Okay? He told the players that if they needed money for any reason, he'd help them. Bay flew to Tallahassee to use Seaburn's influence. Witnesses said the duo gave the student athletes money at 2 area hotels and at the FSU football dormitory. Now, did Florida State University have any idea what was going on during that period? Don't know. The day after the shopping spree, an FSU assistant coach noticed several players wearing expensive sneakers and clothing. So he questioned, where'd the apparel come from? But he just made a silly joke and let it go. 2 days after the shopping spree, FSU head coach Bobby Bowden called a team meeting to warn players about accepting gifts. FSU won the national championship. Also in January 1994, now Seaburn's ex-girlfriend told one of the FSU coaches what had happened. The high school assistant coach who had distributed money for Seaburn and Bay was grilled by FSU athletic committee faculty. Florida State officials blamed unregistered recruiter working for an agent who was unlicensed in the state of Florida. Bowden reported the infraction to the NCAA. Florida State officials claimed they had no knowledge of the incident until then. Had the NCAA learned of the scandal during the season, FSU could have been made to forfeit its season and been barred from playing for the national championship. Bay? Well, he was sentenced to 1 year in prison for failing to register as a sports agent. In April 2000, Auburn basketball star Chris Porter confessed to taking $2,500 from Seaburn. Seaburn would be arrested for making payments to Porter. Seaburn eventually entered a plea deal where he pledged to work with the NCAA in exchange for his knowledge of the scandals. Opportunists like Seaburn they've always lurked in the dark corners of organized sports. Seaburn was an opportunist. Bay wanted athletes to wear his clothing and quickly make him rich. Seaburn promised Bay he could do that through bribes. If FSU had admitted prior to the national championship that their students had been bribed, likely they would have been or had to forfeit. It probably wasn't coincidence that just 2 days after the shoe gifts, head coach Bowden warned his players to refuse bribes. The coach had a legacy to protect. His decision came down to this: $6,000 worth of sneakers and less than $1,000 in cash versus the national championship. No one insulated these student athletes against poor choices. The threat of a person of ill intent taking unethical advantage of a situation is as valid now as it has ever been. So training must be in place.